The emergency beacon cut through the silence of space like a dying star's final scream. Ambassador Zektar of the Galactic Council watched the holographic display with growing unease, his four-armed frame rigid in the command chair. The distress signal originated from the Kepler sector, a remote region that housed 12 different species across 47 worlds. "Analysis complete, Ambassador," reported Chief Science Officer Vex, her crystalline form shimmering as data streams flowed through her translucent body. "The readings are unprecedented." Zektar's primary eyes focused on the data, while his secondary pair monitored the bustling command center of the Council station. Representatives from across the galaxy moved with practiced efficiency, but he could sense the underlying tension. Elaborate. "The Devourers have emerged from their 1,000-year hibernation cycle," Vex announced, her voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "They've consumed 3 entire star systems in the Kepler sector. Preliminary estimates suggest they'll strip the region clean within 90 standard days." A collective shudder ran through the command center. Every species in the galaxy knew the stories of the Devourers, ancient machines that awakened every millennium to feed on energy sources, converting matter into fuel for their incomprehensible technology. They had last appeared during the Dark Convergence, when the galaxy was young and most current civilizations were barely crawling from their cradles. "Survivor reports?" Zektar asked, though he dreaded the answer. "Fragmentary at best. The Kalari managed to evacuate approximately 30% of their population before their homeworld was stripped bare. The Zephyrians lost everything. Their entire species may be extinct. The smaller colonies had no chance." Zektar closed all 4 eyes briefly. The Zephyrians had been poets and philosophers, their crystalline cities among the most beautiful in the galaxy. Now they were likely nothing but processed energy in devourer storage matrices. "What's our response protocol?" asked General Thane, the Drakmari military commander whose scarred hide spoke of countless battles. His species had fought in every major galactic conflict for the past 5 centuries, but even he seemed uncertain. "The archives speak of only one previous encounter with fully awakened devourers," Vex replied, accessing historical databases. "The joint fleet of the Ancient Alliance managed to drive them back into hibernation, but the cost was significant. They lost 60% of their combined forces. And that was when the galaxy was united under a single banner," Zektar observed grimly. "Today, we can barely agree on trade regulations." The truth hung heavy in the recycled air. The Galactic Council was more of a diplomatic forum than a governing body. Each member species maintained its own military, its own interests, and its own agenda. The idea of mounting a unified response to the Devourer threat seemed as impossible as stopping a supernova with good intentions. "I've already reached out to the major powers," General Thane reported. "The Confederation of Worlds claims their fleets are committed to border disputes with the hegemony. The hegemony itself is dealing with internal rebellion. The Free Traders Alliance won't risk their ships without guaranteed compensation, and the Mystic Orders say this is beyond their spiritual purview." Zektar wasn't surprised. Each excuse was technically valid, but he recognized fear when he heard it. The major powers were perfectly content to let the Kepler sector burn if it meant keeping their own territories safe. "What about the smaller nations?" he asked, grasping for any option. "The Aquatic Union's ships can't operate outside water-based environments for extended periods," Vex reported. "The Silicon Collective is too far away, and their vessels move too slowly. The crystal hives are experiencing their molting season and can't be disturbed. The Photonic Empire—" She paused. "They've gone silent. Their entire communication network went dark 3 hours ago." The implications hit everyone simultaneously. The Photonic Empire bordered the Kepler sector. If the Devourers had spread that far already, the situation was worse than they'd imagined. Estimated time until the Devourers reach major population centers? General Thane asked quietly. If they maintain current consumption rates and expansion vectors, 4 months until they reach the outer systems of the Confederation, 6 months to hegemony space, 8 months to the core worlds. The command center fell silent, except for the gentle hum of life support systems. 8 months to save the galaxy, and no one seemed willing or able to act. That's when Lieutenant Kara Singh spoke up from her position at the communications array. She was the sole human representative aboard the station, part of an exchange program that most species viewed as ceremonial. Humanity was still considered a young race, barely 300 years since they'd achieved faster-than-light travel. Most galactic citizens saw them as enthusiastic but naive newcomers who hadn't yet learned the complexities of interstellar politics. Ambassador, I've been monitoring human communication networks, Singh said, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. Earth's United Defense Command has been following the situation since the first distress calls. Zektar turned his attention to the young human. She was smaller than most beings in the command center, built with the compact efficiency common to her species. Humans always seemed fragile to him, lacking the natural armor of Drakmari, the redundant organs of his own people, or the energy-based existence of the Photonic Empire. Yet something in her demeanor suggested hidden strength. And what is humanity's position on this crisis, Lieutenant? We're mobilizing our fleet, sir. All available ships are being recalled from patrol duties and prepared for long-range deployment. Admiral Chen expects to have a task force ready within 72 hours. General Thane's laugh was harsh and bitter. No offense to your species, Lieutenant, but humanity's entire fleet consists of maybe 200 ships. Most of them are exploration vessels or light cruisers. You're talking about facing machines that consumed entire star systems? Singh's jaw tightened slightly, but her voice remained professional. I understand the odds, General, but the way I see it, someone has to try. Your people will die for nothing, the Drakmari general continued. This isn't some border skirmish or piracy suppression. These are devourers. They've been perfecting their technology for millions of years. Maybe, Singh acknowledged. But those are people out there. Families, children, entire civilizations. If we don't at least try to help them, what does that make us? The question hung in the air like an indictment. Around the command center, representatives from dozens of species found sudden interest in their displays and readouts. None of them could meet the human's eyes. Zektar studied Lieutenant Singh with growing fascination. He'd worked with humans before and found them curious creatures, emotional where logic would serve better, stubborn where flexibility was required, and prone to acts of seemingly irrational heroism. But perhaps that was exactly what the galaxy needed now. You're serious about this deployment? He asked. Completely, sir. Admiral Chen's message was very clear. Humanity will answer the Kepler sector's call for help, with or without Council support. Vex's form shimmered with what Zektar recognized as confusion. Lieutenant, I don't understand your species' reasoning. You have no strategic interests in the Kepler sector. No trade agreements, no colonial holdings, no military alliances. Why would you risk your entire fleet for beings you've never met? Singh was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke, her words carried a weight that seemed disproportionate to her small frame. Because it's the right thing to do. The simplicity of the statement was stunning. No complex political calculations, no discussion of cost-benefit ratios, no analysis of strategic implications. Just a straightforward moral imperative that cut through all the diplomatic complexity like a blade through silk. Your admiral is sending his ships to die for strangers, General Thane said, though his tone had lost some of its earlier mockery. Maybe, Singh replied again, but at least we'll die trying to save someone. Can the rest of you say the same? The accusation was delivered without malice, but it hit like a physical blow. Every being in the command center was forced to confront the uncomfortable truth that they were prioritizing their own safety over the lives of billions. Zektar made a decision that would echo through galactic history. Lieutenant Singh, please inform Admiral Chen that he has the Council's official blessing for this operation. We may not be able to provide military support, but we can offer intelligence, supply coordinates, and diplomatic assistance. Thank you, sir, but Admiral Chen wasn't waiting for permission. He was just being polite by keeping you informed. Another uncomfortable silence. The humans weren't just volunteering for a suicide mission. They were doing it whether the galaxy approved or not. Over the next 3 days, Zektar watched with growing amazement as humanity mobilized for war. Their response was unlike anything he'd seen from other species. Where most civilizations would spend weeks debating authorization and months preparing logistics, the humans moved with startling efficiency. Their entire fleet, all 187 operational ships, converged on Earth's orbital shipyards. Industrial facilities that normally produced civilian craft were retooled overnight to manufacture ammunition and repair parts. Merchant vessels were pressed into service as supply ships and troop transports. But what truly impressed Zektar was the human response to volunteers. When Admiral Chen announced that the mission was entirely voluntary due to its dangerous nature, he expected perhaps half his crews to sign on. Instead, he faced the opposite problem: too many volunteers. Retired officers came out of civilian life to serve. Merchant marine captains offered their ships and services free of charge. Young cadets barely out of the academy begged for assignment to the fleet. Even civilian specialists, doctors, engineers, technicians, flooded recruitment centers, demanding to be part of the mission. The entire human species seemed gripped by a collective determination to help complete strangers facing annihilation. Their news networks carried constant coverage of the crisis. Their entertainment industry donated profits to support families of deployed personnel, and their governments suspended all non-essential activities to focus resources on the relief effort. It was, Zektar realized, completely insane and completely magnificent. "I still don't understand them," General Thane confided during a private conversation. "My species has fought beside humans in 3 conflicts now. They're brave enough, clever enough, tough enough. But this is different. They're not even pretending there's something in it for them." "Perhaps that's exactly why they might succeed where others would fail," Zektar suggested. "You really think 200 human ships can stop the Devourers?" Zektar considered the question seriously. "No, probably not. But I think 200 humans who've decided to save the galaxy might accomplish something unprecedented." As the human fleet prepared to depart Earth's system, Zektar received a personal message from Admiral Sarah Chen. The middle-aged woman appeared on his display with the kind of calm confidence that comes from absolute certainty of purpose. "Ambassador, I wanted to thank you for your support. I know this seems like madness to most of the galaxy. Admiral, may I ask you something?" "Of course. Why are you doing this?" "Your science advisors must have explained the odds." Admiral Chen smiled, and for a moment Zektar glimpsed something in her expression that he couldn't quite identify. Determination, certainly, but something deeper as well. Something that might have been hope. "Ambassador, my grandfather once told me a story about a man who saw a child drowning in a lake. The man couldn't swim very well, the lake was dangerous, and he had his own family to think about. But he jumped in anyway because that's what you do when someone needs help. You don't calculate the odds, you just act. And if the man drowns trying to save the child, then at least he tried. And maybe his example inspires someone else to jump in. And maybe together, they save everyone." After the transmission ended, Zektar sat in his private quarters, staring out at the stars. Somewhere out there, ancient machines were methodically consuming entire worlds, and the galaxy's greatest powers were hiding behind walls of political necessity and strategic caution. But also out there, 200 human ships were racing toward certain death for the sole purpose of helping others. They carried no guarantee of success, no promise of reward, no hope of glory. They carried only the stubborn human belief that someone had to try. For the first time since the crisis began, Zektar allowed himself to feel something besides despair. Not hope, exactly. The odds were still astronomical. But something like admiration. The galaxy might not deserve humanity's sacrifice, but perhaps it needed their example. As reports filtered in of the human fleet's departure from Earth system, Zektar made another decision. He activated his personal communication array and began composing messages to every major news network in the galaxy. If humanity was going to face the Devourers alone, then at least the galaxy would witness their courage. The least they could do was remember. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler sector like ghosts materializing from the void. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UDS Indomitable, watching the tactical display populate with contacts that made her stomach clench. "Sweet Mother of God," whispered her tactical officer, Commander Martinez. "It's worse than the reports indicated." The view screen showed what had once been the Zirian system. 3 planets that had housed over 2 billion Kalari now existed as skeletal frameworks, their surfaces stripped down to molten cores. Massive geometric structures moved through the system like predatory whales, each one larger than Earth's moon. The Devourers. "Admiral, we're receiving multiple distress signals," reported Lieutenant Commander Park from communications. "There are survivors scattered across 17 different locations. Emergency shelters, damaged ships, even some hiding in asteroid fields." Chen felt the familiar weight of command settle on her shoulders. 200 human ships against machines that had consumed 3 star systems. Every tactical analysis said this was suicide, but those distress signals represented real people facing extinction. "Transmit to all ships. Commence Operation Guardian Angel. Rescue and evacuation of survivors is primary objective. Engagement with Devourer forces is authorized only in defense of rescue operations." Around the fleet, human ships spread out in a pattern no other species would have attempted. Instead of maintaining defensive formations, they scattered to cover maximum ground, each ship or small squadron racing toward different survivor locations. It was tactically unsound by conventional standards, but humans had never been conventional. Chen watched her ships disappear into the system's chaos and activated the fleet communication channel. "All vessels, this is Indomitable. I know this looks impossible. I know the odds. But remember why we're here. Every life we save today is a victory. Every person we get out is a win against the darkness. Stay focused, stay brave, and let's show this galaxy what humans are capable of." The UDS Defiance, a heavy cruiser under Captain Jake Morrison, was the first to encounter active Devourer resistance. Morrison's ship had been racing toward an emergency beacon when 3 Devourer scouts emerged from behind a gas giant. "Contact bearing 270, range 4 million kilometers, called out his sensor operator. "They're moving to intercept." The Devourer scouts were sleek killing machines, their hull composed of some dark material that seemed to absorb light. Energy signatures indicated weapons systems beyond anything in the human arsenal. "Sir, should we retreat?" asked his executive officer. Morrison studied the tactical display. The emergency beacon was coming from a damaged Kalari transport with 300 souls aboard. If Defiance withdrew, those people would die. "Negative. We didn't come this far to run from a fight. All hands, battle stations. Helm, maximum acceleration toward that transport. We're going through them, not around them." What happened next became legend throughout the galaxy. Instead of engaging in a conventional standoff, Defiance accelerated directly toward the Devourer scouts at maximum velocity. The alien machines, programmed for millions of years of predictable combat patterns, hesitated for a crucial second. Morrison's ship opened fire with everything they had, particle beams, missiles, railgun rounds, while maintaining their collision course. The humans weren't trying to win a tactical engagement. They were trying to punch through to the survivors. The lead Devourer scout, caught off guard by the suicidal charge, took a full spread of nuclear missiles to its forward sections. Ancient armor held, but the impact disrupted its targeting systems long enough for Defiance to slip past. "Transport located," reported Morrison's scanner operator. 317 Kalari aboard, life support failing. "Docking bay crews, prepare for emergency evacuation, medical teams standing by. Helm, bring us alongside." While Morrison's ship took defensive positions around the crippled transport, his crew performed a miracle of logistics. Human docking procedures designed for rapid military operations allowed them to evacuate all 300 Kalari in just 47 minutes. Other species would have required hours. Similar scenes played out across the system. The destroyer UDS Courage found a group of Zephyrian artists hiding in a hollowed-out asteroid, their crystalline forms slowly dying in the cold. Lieutenant Sarah Okafor led an engineering team into the asteroid's heart, using human mining equipment to extract the survivors while Devourer patrols hunted overhead. The frigate UDS Relentless discovered an entire Xerion family trapped in their damaged ship's life pod. When their power failed and they faced asphyxiation, Chief Petty Officer Marcus Webb put on a vacuum suit and personally carried each family member to safety, making 7 trips through space while Devourer sensors swept the area. But it was the actions of Captain Elena Vasquez and the UDS Redemption that truly demonstrated human adaptability. Her ship encountered a Devourer harvesting station actively processing captured civilians. The massive structure was defended by automated systems that had evolved over millennia, making conventional assault impossible. "Captain, we count approximately 2,000 beings inside that facility," reported her intelligence officer. "Mixed species, all scheduled for processing within 6 hours." Vasquez studied the station's design through her ship's sensors. It was built like a factory, with intake ports for raw materials and processing chambers that converted biological matter into energy storage units. Horrifically efficient, but like all factories, it had certain vulnerabilities. "Engineering. I need you to analyze their energy distribution network. Tactical, map their defensive grid. Science, tell me about their waste disposal systems." Her crew worked with the focused intensity that humans brought to impossible problems. Within an hour, they had a plan that was either brilliant or completely insane. "Captain, you're suggesting we fly inside that thing?" asked Commander Torres, her executive officer. "Not fly, get pulled. Look at these schematics. They have massive intake ports designed to draw in debris and process it. If we configure our ship to look like wreckage and shut down all active systems, their automated systems might pull us right inside." It was the kind of plan that no other species would attempt. The margin for error was practically non-existent, and if it failed, Redemption and all hands would be processed along with the prisoners. But humans had a talent for turning impossible circumstances into opportunities. Vasquez had her crew deploy every piece of spare metal they could find around the ship's hull, creating the appearance of battle damage. They vented plasma to simulate engine failure and powered down everything except minimal life support. Then they drifted toward the harvesting station like a dead hulk. The Devourer facility's sensors examined the approaching wreckage and concluded it was valuable salvage. Massive tractor beams engaged, drawing Redemption into the station's processing bay along with tons of actual debris. "All stop," Vasquez whispered, as her ship was pulled into the alien structure's belly. "Silent running protocols in effect." Inside the harvesting station, humans found horrors that would haunt their dreams for years. Thousands of beings from dozens of species were held in processing chambers, awaiting conversion into energy matrices. But they also found something the Devourers hadn't anticipated: determined humans with improvised weapons and absolute refusal to give up. Vasquez split her crew into 12 teams, each tasked with reaching different prisoner blocks. They moved through the station's corridors like shadows, using human stealth techniques and adaptive tactics that the ancient facility had no protocols for. The rescue operation lasted 16 hours. Human engineers disabled security systems using methods the Devourers had never encountered: jury-rigged solutions, creative bypasses, and straightforward violence applied at precisely the right moments. Human medical teams treated injured prisoners with field medicine techniques that prioritized survival over proper procedures. When Devourer security systems finally detected the intrusion, they found an empty harvesting station. Every prisoner had been evacuated, and the humans had left behind something unexpected: explosives placed throughout the facility's power core. Redemption emerged from the station just as the charges detonated, crippling the entire structure. Vasquez had not only rescued 2,000 beings, but also eliminated a major Devourer installation. Word of these actions spread through human communication networks and beyond. On the council station, Ambassador Zektar watched reports stream in with growing amazement. "They're not fighting the Devourers," he observed to General Thane. "They're ignoring them. The humans are so focused on saving lives that they're treating the galaxy's greatest threat as a minor obstacle." "It's working, though," the Drakmari general admitted grudgingly. "Look at these rescue numbers. In 72 hours, they've evacuated more civilians than our forces saved in the entire hegemony border conflict." The human approach was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Where other species would have formed battle lines and engaged in formal combat, humans treated the situation like a massive search and rescue operation. They used speed instead of firepower, creativity instead of protocol, and determination instead of strategy. Captain Lisa Zhang of the UDS Perseverance discovered this approach's true effectiveness when her ship encountered a Devourer command vessel. The massive machine was coordinating the systematic destruction of an entire moon when Perseverance arrived to evacuate a hidden research station. "Captain, that thing is the size of a small city," reported her tactical officer. "We can't fight it." "Who said anything about fighting?" Zhang replied. "Helm, take us into that debris field. Science, I want to know how those Devourers communicate with each other." Zhang's plan was audacious, even by human standards. Instead of engaging the command vessel directly, she positioned her ship to monitor its communications while her crew evacuated the research station. But monitoring revealed something interesting. The Devourers used predictable signal patterns that human encryption specialists could analyze. "Captain, we're detecting what appears to be targeting coordination signals," reported Lieutenant Kim from the science station. "If we could disrupt them, the entire local network would lose synchronization," Zhang finished. "Do it." Perseverance's communications array, modified with components from the research station, broadcast a signal that was perfectly designed to create chaos in Devourer command networks. For 17 minutes, every Devourer unit in the system received contradictory orders, creating windows of opportunity that human rescue ships exploited ruthlessly. During those 17 minutes, human vessels evacuated 4 different survivor groups, while Devourer units wandered in confusion. It wasn't a military victory in the conventional sense, but it demonstrated something that worried galactic observers. Humans were learning, adapting, finding weaknesses that million-year-old machines didn't know they had. Admiral Chen monitored these operations from Indomitable's flag bridge, feeling a mixture of pride and concern. Her crews were performing miracles, but the cost was mounting. 17 ships had sustained significant damage, 3 had been destroyed, and they had barely scratched the surface of the Devourer presence. "Admiral, We're receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Council, reported her communications officer. Zektar's image appeared on the main screen, his four-armed frame conveying urgent concern. Admiral Chen, the Council has been monitoring your operations. Your courage is unprecedented, but intelligence suggests the main Devourer fleet is converging on your position. How long do we have? 48 hours at most. Admiral, you've done more than anyone thought possible, but you need to withdraw. The force approaching you is 10 times larger than anything you've faced. Chen looked around her bridge at faces that had become family over the past months of preparation and 3 days of combat. Young officers who had volunteered for a suicide mission, veteran crew members who believed saving strangers was worth dying for, specialists who had given up comfortable civilian lives to be here. Ambassador, how many survivors are still in the system? Our estimates suggest approximately 50,000 beings scattered across multiple locations. Then we're not leaving. Admiral, please reconsider. Your ships cannot stand against the main fleet. Chen smiled with the same expression her grandfather might have worn before jumping into that dangerous lake. Ambassador, you're probably right. But we didn't come here to fight the Devourers. We came here to save people, and until every person who can be saved is safe, we're staying. The transmission ended, leaving Chen alone with her thoughts and the weight of command. Around her, the bridge crew prepared for the next phase of operations with the calm efficiency that humans brought to impossible situations. In 48 hours, the largest Devourer fleet in 1,000 years would arrive to face 200 human ships and their stubborn refusal to abandon those in need. The outcome was predetermined, but the humans seemed determined to make their final stand matter. Across the galaxy, other species watched and waited, witnessing something they had never seen before, a civilization willing to die for strangers simply because it was the right thing to do. The main Devourer fleet emerged from hyperspace like a plague of mechanical locusts, their dark hulls blotting out stars across a light year of space. Admiral Sarah Chen watched the tactical display populate with contacts that defied comprehension. Over 3,000 ships ranging from frigate-sized scouts to massive world-ship carriers that dwarfed anything humans had ever built. "Final count, Admiral," reported Commander Martinez, his voice steady despite the impossible odds. 3,217 Devourer vessels, mass displacement equivalent to roughly half the asteroid belt. Chen nodded calmly, as if facing annihilation by ancient machines was just another day at the office. Around her, the bridge crew of the UDS Indomitable maintained their stations with the quiet professionalism that had become humanity's signature throughout this crisis. Fleet status report? 163 operational vessels, Admiral. 17 ships lost, 20 severely damaged but still functional. All surviving vessels report ready for operations. The mathematics were stark. 163 human ships against 3,000 Devourer vessels. But Chen had not come this far to be deterred by unfavorable math. Open a channel to all ships. Throughout the human fleet, sailors and officers paused at their stations as their admiral's voice reached them across the void. My friends, in the past 4 days we have evacuated over 200,000 beings from certain death. We have rescued families, saved children, and given hope to species that had already written their own obituaries. The galaxy will remember what we accomplished here, regardless of what happens next. Chen paused, looking out at the approaching Devourer fleet through Indomitable's main view screen. But our job isn't finished. Our sensors indicate approximately 47,000 survivors still trapped in this system. 47,000 people who are counting on us to get them home. So we're going to do what humans do best. We're going to find a way. Across the fleet, crews returned to their duties with renewed determination. They were about to face impossible odds for the sake of complete strangers, and somehow that felt exactly right. The Devourer fleet's approach was methodical and terrifying. They moved in perfect formation, their coordination suggesting a hive-mind intelligence that had been perfecting warfare for millions of years. No wasted motion, no unnecessary communication, just the inexorable advance of machines designed for consumption. But as they closed distance with the human fleet, something unexpected happened. The humans didn't retreat, but they didn't advance either. Instead, they dispersed into a seemingly random pattern that violated every principle of space warfare. On the Devourer flagship, the Prime Consciousness analyzed this unprecedented behavior. In a million years of awakening cycles, no species had ever faced them with such apparent disregard for self-preservation. The pattern suggested either madness or some incomprehensible tactical doctrine. The Prime Consciousness decided on madness. It had seen species commit suicide rather than face processing, but never in such an organized fashion. These humans would be eliminated quickly, then the harvest could continue efficiently. Admiral Chen watched the Devourer fleet adjust its formation to counter human tactics that didn't actually exist. She smiled grimly and opened a private channel to her most trusted captains. Phoenix Protocol is now in effect. You all know what needs to be done. Throughout the human fleet, ships that had seemed randomly scattered suddenly revealed their true purpose. They weren't positioned for battle. They were positioned for the largest rescue operation in galactic history. Captain Morrison's Defiance, hiding in the shadow of a dead moon, suddenly activated every sensor and transmission array they had. All Kalari emergency frequencies. This is the human rescue fleet. Transmit your location for immediate evacuation. Repeat, immediate evacuation available. Across the system, similar broadcasts went out in dozens of languages. Zephyrian crystal song, Xerion electromagnetic pulses, aquatic union subsonic calls. Human linguists and communications specialists had spent days learning how to speak to everyone they might encounter. The response was overwhelming. Emergency beacons activated throughout the system as survivors who had been hiding in silence suddenly revealed their locations. Damaged ships, underground shelters, asteroid hideouts, even a few beings floating in emergency suits. Everywhere Chen looked, new contacts appeared. "Admiral, we're tracking over 300 separate survivor groups," reported Lieutenant Commander Park. "Estimated total of 46,800 souls. Then we go get them. All ships, execute Lazarus pattern, maximum dispersion, maximum speed. Rescue operations commence now." What followed was unlike any military operation in galactic history. While the massive Devourer fleet moved to engage in formal battle, human ships scattered like leaves in a hurricane. Each vessel raced toward different survivor groups with single-minded determination. The Devourers, programmed for conventional warfare, found themselves confused by enemies who refused to fight properly. Instead of forming battle lines, the humans acted like they were conducting a massive humanitarian mission in the middle of a war zone. Captain Elena Vasquez, fresh from her successful infiltration of the harvesting station, found herself racing toward a crippled photonic empire vessel that was slowly dying in the radiation shadow of a gas giant. The ship carried over 2,000 energy-based beings whose containment systems were failing. "Captain, Devourer interceptors are moving to cut us off," reported her tactical officer. "Time to intercept? 16 minutes at current velocity. Time to reach the photonic ship? 14 minutes if we maintain maximum acceleration." Vasquez didn't hesitate. "All power to engines. We're going to thread the needle." Redemption streaked through space at velocities that stressed her hull plating, racing against time and physics. Behind them, 3 Devourer interceptors gave chase, their weapons charging for what should have been an easy kill. But Vasquez had learned something important during her previous encounters. Devourers were programmed for efficiency, not adaptation. They expected their targets to behave in predictable ways. Humans, unfortunately, had never been predictable. Engineering. Prepare for emergency power transfer. On my mark, route all engine power to our transporters. Captain, that will leave us dead in space, protested her chief engineer. For about 30 seconds. But 30 seconds is all we need. Redemption reached the Photonic Empire vessel with barely a minute to spare. Instead of attempting complex docking procedures, Vasquez had her crew perform a maneuver that violated every safety protocol in the book. They transferred all their momentum to the transporters and began emergency mass evacuation of energy beings directly through their ship's hull. It worked. In 47 seconds, they evacuated all 2,000 photonic beings into specially prepared containment chambers. By the time the Devourer interceptors arrived, Redemption was already accelerating away with her precious cargo. Similar miracles played out across the system. Captain Lisa Zhang of Perseverance found herself coordinating the evacuation of an entire underground city on a shattered moon. The Xerion survivors had been hiding in natural caverns for days, but their air was running out. Zhang's solution was typically human. Instead of attempting to extract 4,700 beings one by one, she had her engineers collapse specific cavern sections to create natural airlocks. Then she used her ship's mining lasers to cut transportation tunnels directly to the surface. "Captain, this is completely outside regulations," protested her operations officer. "Show me the regulation for evacuating an underground city while under attack by ancient killer robots, and I'll follow it to the letter," Zhang replied. "Until then, we do what works." It worked spectacularly. In 3 hours, Perseverance had evacuated the entire population and was racing toward the fleet rendezvous point with 4,700 grateful Xerions aboard. But it was Captain Jake Morrison who encountered the situation that would become legend throughout the galaxy. While escorting a convoy of rescued civilians toward safety, Defiance received a distress call that made Morrison's blood run cold. "Captain, it's a children's evacuation ship," reported his communications officer. "Kalari vessel, carrying over 800 younglings. Their life support is failing, and they're surrounded by Devourer hunter-killers." Morrison studied the tactical display. The Kalari ship was trapped in a debris field, protected momentarily by the wreckage, but facing certain death. 6 Devourer hunter-killers circled like sharks, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "Sir, recommend we proceed to the rendezvous point," suggested his executive officer. "We're carrying 300 civilians ourselves. We can't risk them." Morrison was quiet for a long moment. 800 children against 300 adults. The moral mathematics were impossible. But sometimes impossible problems required impossible solutions. "Signal the convoy. They're to proceed to rendezvous without us. All hands, prepare for combat operations." "Sir, 6 hunter-killers against 1 heavy cruiser? Those aren't good odds." Morrison smiled with the expression his grandfather might have worn before charging an enemy position. "Then we'll have to even them out." What happened next became the subject of military study for generations. Morrison didn't try to defeat 6 Devourer hunter-killers. Instead, he used them against each other. Defiance charged directly into the center of the enemy formation, broadcasting on all frequencies and firing in every direction. To the Devourer units, programmed for efficient targeting, the human ship presented the most valuable target in the engagement. All 6 hunter-killers focused their fire on the lone human vessel. Morrison had counted on this. As weapons fire converged on his position, he performed a maneuver that military historians would later call the Morrison Spiral, a high-speed corkscrew pattern that caused the Devourer weapons to track his ship through their own formation. Ancient machines, following targeting protocols that had worked for millions of years, found themselves firing through each other to reach the madly evading human ship. In the space of 90 seconds, 3 Devourer hunter-killers were destroyed by friendly fire. One was severely damaged, and the remaining 2 were so confused by Morrison's tactics that they ceased firing entirely. Children's transport, this is UDS Defiance. Maintain current position while we clear your exit route. Morrison's ship had taken tremendous damage in the engagement, but her crew worked miracles to keep her functional. They escorted the Kalari transport to safety, saving 800 young lives while their own ship slowly died around them. As rescue operations continued throughout the system, something unprecedented began to happen. The Devourer fleet, faced with enemies who refused to fight conventionally, began to show signs of confusion and inefficiency. Ships collided while trying to intercept wildly maneuvering human vessels. Communication networks overloaded from trying to process unexpected tactical data. Hunter-killer units found themselves chasing rescue ships that led them into asteroid fields and gas giant atmospheres. Admiral Chen watched this developing chaos from Indomitable's bridge with growing amazement. They're not adapting, she realized. They're so focused on efficiency that they can't handle chaos. The insight sparked an idea that was either brilliant or completely insane. Chen activated the fleet communication channel and outlined a plan that made her officers question her sanity. All ships, new operational parameters. We're going to show these machines what human chaos looks like. What followed violated every principle of space warfare ever developed. Human ships began operating in patterns that were deliberately unpredictable, random course changes, unnecessary maneuvers, tactical decisions that made no sense from a military perspective, but created maximum confusion among enemies programmed for logical behavior. Captain Vasquez flew her ship backward while evacuating survivors from a space station. Captain Zhang used her mining lasers to carve artistic patterns in asteroids while her crew rescued trapped miners. Captain Morrison, his ship held together by determination and spare parts, began broadcasting human music on all frequencies while escorting a medical transport to safety. The Devourer fleet, faced with this carnival of tactical insanity, began to break down. Units designed for perfect coordination found themselves unable to predict human behavior. Communication networks crashed from trying to process actions that had no logical military purpose. Ancient tactical algorithms, refined over millions of years, encountered their first system error in eons. From the council station, Ambassador Zektar watched the battle with growing astonishment. "They're winning," he told General Thane, "not by fighting, but by being so completely unpredictable that the Devourers can't function." "It's not sustainable," the Drakmari general replied, though his tone suggested grudging admiration. "They're taking heavy casualties." This was true. Human ships were being destroyed throughout the engagement, their crews dying to buy time for evacuation operations. But for every ship lost, hundreds of beings were saved, and somehow the humans just kept coming. The turning point came when Admiral Chen made a decision that defied all logic. With the majority of survivors evacuated and her fleet reduced to 93 operational vessels, she ordered a general retreat, not to safety, but deeper into Devourer-controlled space. "Admiral, that's the wrong direction," protested Commander Martinez. "No, it's exactly the right direction. All ships, follow my lead. We're going to visit the Devourer home base." Chen had realized something during the chaotic battle. The Devourers weren't just efficient. They were dependent on efficiency. Their entire fleet was controlled from a central command nexus, a massive station that coordinated all their operations. If that station could be disrupted, the human fleet, now reduced to fewer than 100 ships, raced toward the heart of Devourer space. Behind them, the confused alien fleet tried to reorganize and give chase, but their coordination had been shattered by hours of attempting to counter human unpredictability. Chen's target was a station the size of a small moon, bristling with defensive systems that had never been breached in a million years of operation. It was protected by overlapping energy shields, automated weapon systems, and the combined firepower of a dozen Guardian vessels. "Admiral, how exactly do we get through those defenses?" asked her tactical officer. Chen smiled with the expression her species wore when facing impossible odds. "We don't get through them. We go around them." The human fleet approached the command station not as warships, but as refugee vessels. They broadcast continuous distress signals, scattered debris to simulate battle damage, and flew in the chaotic patterns of panicked civilian craft. To the station's automated systems, they appeared to be escaped survivors fleeing the battle, valuable for processing, but not an immediate threat. The defensive systems allowed them to approach to optimal harvesting range before attempting to capture them. That was when Admiral Chen revealed her final gambit. Hidden among the human ships were the evacuated survivors from the Photonic Empire, energy beings capable of existing outside normal matter-energy constraints. At Chen's signal, they emerged from the human ships and infiltrated the Devourer command station's energy systems. The photonic beings, grateful beyond measure for their rescue, used their natural abilities to cause systematic failures throughout the station's networks. Control systems crashed, communication arrays went offline, and the coordination protocols that controlled the entire Devourer fleet simply stopped working. Across Devourer space, 3,000 ships suddenly found themselves without central coordination. Million-year-old machines dependent on networked intelligence became individual units with no shared purpose or tactical doctrine. The greatest fleet in galactic history scattered like leaves in a hurricane. Chen watched the dissolution of the Devourer threat from her bridge, feeling exhaustion and triumph in equal measure. Fleet status report: 61 operational vessels remaining, Admiral. Casualty reports still coming in, but preliminary estimates suggest we've lost approximately 40% of our force. The price had been staggering, but the results spoke for themselves. Over 230,000 beings had been evacuated from certain death. The Devourer fleet, seemingly invincible just hours before, was now scattered and leaderless. The immediate crisis was over. "Admiral, we're receiving transmissions from across the galaxy," reported the communications officer. "The Confederation of Worlds is requesting permission to send aid. The hegemony is offering military support. Even the mystic orders are transmitting offers of assistance." Chen nodded wearily. Now that the danger was past, everyone wanted to help. But the real help had come from 200 human ships and their stubborn refusal to abandon those in need. 3 weeks later, Admiral Chen stood before the full assembly of the Galactic Council. Representatives from every major species packed the chamber, and for the first time in her career, she felt the weight of an entire galaxy's attention. Ambassador Zektar rose to address the assembly. "Admiral Chen, the Council has asked me to express our gratitude for humanity's actions during the Kepler crisis. Your species faced impossible odds to save beings you had never met, asking for nothing in return. This selflessness is unprecedented." Chen listened to the formal speeches and commendations with half attention. Her mind was on the memorial services for the crews who hadn't made it home, the families who had sacrificed everything for strangers they would never meet. But when called upon to speak, she stood with the quiet dignity that had carried her through the crisis. "Honored representatives, the galaxy has asked why humanity risked everything for beings we barely knew. The answer is simple: because they needed help, and we were able to give it. Sometimes that's reason enough." General Thane, representing the Drakmari military, spoke next. "Admiral, your tactics during the crisis were unconventional. Military analysts are still trying to understand how you defeated the Devourers." Chen smiled with the expression her species had worn throughout the crisis, determined, optimistic, and absolutely certain of their purpose. "General, we didn't defeat the Devourers. We just refused to let them win." As applause echoed through the chamber, Chen realized that humanity had accomplished something more important than military victory. They had shown the galaxy what it could become, a community that protected its most vulnerable members, that valued life over efficiency, that would risk everything for the simple principle that everyone deserved help when they needed it most. The Kepler crisis had ended not with humanity's destruction, but with their example. And sometimes, an example was the most powerful weapon of all. Years later, when species across the galaxy faced their own impossible challenges, they would remember the human fleet that raced toward certain death simply because it was the right thing to do. They would remember that when the galaxy cried for help, only humans came, and that made all the difference.